Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Founders Den. Good to see you all. Maybe has been planning this event for more than a year, because the theory is that Joburg's founder scene is really where it's at. Cape Town, we hear it all the time and say that's where it's happening. But we're very excited to be here with the Springback team and all of you tonight this week. Just network and celebrate and, just learn from each other and just propel the startup founder ecosystem, on this side of the country. So very excited to be here. My name is Renier. I'm going to be the host tonight. As we kick off, just want to give you all some rules for the facility. We've got this wonderful facility, but it's obviously within the old mutual business, and just ask that we can please respect some of the rules. Firstly, no firearms. I'm sure no one has a firearm here. If you do have a firearm, please go put it in your car. So every car is also has a second one, no vaping or smoking inside the building. I think smokers these days all know the rules. So there's a designated smoking area on the outside. You can make use of that. If you don't know where that is, you're welcome to just chat to any of the security that will help you. ER24 is on standby for a medical emergency, so if you get extremely excited about what you learned here tonight, do have a medical emergency. We do have them on board. Building emergency, please report the emergency to security guards, lots of security guards outside. Emergency evacuation, when there's an emergency, please don't smoke, use an elevator, or make any non-emergency calls. Okay. Remain calm and listen to the PA announcements that will come up. No firearms again. Please ensure all attendees are signed in. No eating in the auditorium, only water. And then, very important, alcohol only in the food emporium. I've got a bigger license. So please don't take away beer with you. But you're welcome to enjoy alcohol within the area even after the event. And, there's no alcohol outside as well. So if you're smoking and you're having a beer, please down the beer. Have a smoke. That's good. Okay, awesome. Cool, so let's get into tonight. So tonight's made possible firstly by Next 176, which is the venture studio, venture services, venture side of Old Mutual. And they're doing fantastic work. I had the privilege to spend some time with some of the team this afternoon here, all the things they're about. They're definitely movers and shakers when it comes to innovation, startups, and the next generation of technology and businesses and technology businesses in South Africa. So if you don't know what the Next 176 is all about, then chat to one of their team here tonight. But also we can go check them out and see what they're all about. So they sponsored the venue for us and obviously provided all the wonderful food, snacks, and drinks from the outside. So come on, let's thank Next 176. And then Specno is the other sponsor for tonight. Specno is the company that was founded in Cape Town. And it's going to be a short video to just give you a bit of a backstory about it.
Picture this. In 2018, a fearless squad far from Silicon Valley decided to take on the world. No investors, no guidebook, and definitely no friends in high places. Just pure passion and grit. Our mission? To become the best digital innovation agency in the world. And guess what? We're crushing it. Armed with a team of problem-solving stallions, product owners, designers, and developers, we're not just experts, we're creators of digital wonders. This is Specno. We've collaborated with hundreds of innovative startups, successful businesses, and iconic brands. We've not only validated, designed, and built incredible products, we've innovated and curated digital experiences that have left an undeniable mark on entire industries, accelerating our clients to new digital frontiers. Ready to take your business to the next level? No matter the challenge, our team is ready to tackle it. It all starts right here.
Awesome. So Specno started in Cape Town a few years ago, 5 years ago, and one of the very early things they did was build tech for startups. So if you have a founder that doesn't have a technical team, they would build it, eventually expand it to a full suite of services that services startups. And obviously that learning helps a lot now in the space they're in now, where they are able to recruit some of the best talent because of the the work environment that they have. But because of the know-how, understanding like what kind of tech works best in what kind of environment, what kind of industry, what kind of startup, they now also offer services where they do a team augmentation where you can get a specific team member that's really an expert in that specific industry and has a passion for that industry, and then they place that resource within the organization. So come on, let's give Specna a big thanks for putting together Right, so without further ado, we're going to get into our panelists for tonight. They're all here in the front row, but I'm going to invite them one by one. First, we've got Rajiv, who's the Chief Investment Officer at Next176. Rajiv, can you please join us on the panel? Just make sure you sit under your name, if they don't put you the balls down. Alright, and next up we've got Alex, who's the founder of Naked. Alex is not naked, you not even know he's naked. It must be lovely working at Naked. Everybody keeps making those jokes, and it's like, it's not funny anymore, but you have to laugh every time. I love that. And then lastly, we've got Priaash from the Awareness Company. He's coming with us. Right, so we're chatting next-gen technology and, digital change and how to embrace it and navigate it. So I'll ask each of you like an intro question, but you're also welcome to just, say what you do, maybe as a start and then get into it. Rajiv, I'm going to start with you, from an investor perspective. If we speak about next-gen tech, everybody's minds probably go to AI, but it's much more than that. And, one of the traps when you're an investor is, you just get into something because it's, hype cycle. So everybody's throwing money at AI. So from an investor perspective, how do you look at it, and how do you find opportunities in this change that's come about all of a sudden in the last 3 years?
Firstly, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Cool, it's working. Firstly, thanks so much for having me. Really look forward to contributing to the conversation. I probably don't know as much about tech or next-gen tech as the two gentlemen sitting next to me. My claim to fame is I recently got engaged and planning a wedding. The reason I mentioned that is when I looked at the cost of all of the vendors, I'm trying to convince my fiancée to get married in the metaverse. So I'm hoping that tonight, give me the ammunition I need to convince her to get married in the metaverse and save me some money. That's the reason that I was really excited about this, as well as the fact that it's an interesting conversation. So, from an investor perspective, should I just get rid of this? Is it going in and out? Yeah. Can you hear me loud? Yeah. Cool. So from an investor perspective, I think I want to start with something that may be cliched and we may have heard it before, but the way I always go back to a quote I heard, Fusita Makwayo, South African businessman, private equity investor. Most of us probably know him, there's probably mixed reviews about him. But he said something a couple of years ago that really, really resonated with me and stuck with me. Okay, cool. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good.
So what he said was, a first-time founder focuses on product. A second-time founder focuses on distribution. And a third-time founder focuses on value chains. And the reason I mention that is if you take one thing away from what I say this evening, it's value chains. I'm a value chain investor. That's the way I look at the world, from a macro to a micro. And the reason I say that is any value chain that you think about has an upstream component and downstream. So upstream, if you think about the mining sector, for example, or the ag sector, you've got your inputs, you've got your farming, or you've got your mining, then you've got your storage, your distribution, and then on the downstream, that's where you start to hit retail market, so wholesale, retail. And the consumer sits at the end of every value chain. And I think the one thing that we all are sometimes guilty of doing is we look at next-gen technology through the lens of the consumer that sits at the end of a value chain. And we go, that's what's happening in technology. And why I mention that is because if you look at the entire value chain before that, there are businesses who buy and sell to businesses, who buy and sell to businesses, and then you have the consumer. And so when I look from an investor lens at opportunities, I look at who's taking a value chain perspective. Because the reality is we all live in a market that is really tiny from a consumer standpoint by global standards. Consumers don't have purchasing power, and that's the reason that most investors like us tend to favor B2B business models, at least for now, until we evolve into a consumer market that allows us to grow and scale B2C products. Unless you're naked, not literally, but I had to go there. And you figured out a model that resonates with consumers or customers directly. But for the majority of businesses that tend to scale in the markets that we operate in, it tends to be the value chain focus and delivering value to the people who are able to pay for that value at various points along the value chain. So I think that's the takeaway or sort of the context that I'd like to set for the conversation.
And I love that, Rajiv, because ultimately, people's habits stay generally the same, and they do slowly change over time. But ultimately, we have consumers, people buying things, people doing things. So, this next generation of technology, all it's really doing is it's just, giving new ways to solve old problems, optimizing things. It's not changing so much in the world as it is changing the way we do things.
Exactly. This question about what is next gen technology, how is it evolving, how is it changing, how is it going to affect our lives? It's kind of like going back to the late 80s or early 90s and asking, how is the internet going to change? By the way, side note, I found this out recently, that the internet, we got the internet around the same time that we became a democracy, so in the early 90s. And if you kind of look back at the last 30 years, we've had democracy, the internet, and I would say that third wave of massive fundamental change for us is the technology that we're going to be talking about tonight. The fourth may be a government of national unity, let's see, but let's stick to the third for now.
So far, so good.
So just to close on that, when you talk about the application, I think the reason I use the example of the internet is because that was the tool that fundamentally changed everything. So when we talk about next-gen technology, from a healthcare perspective, it could be precision medicine. From a manufacturing perspective, it could be robotics and IoT. From a retail perspective, it could be e-commerce. But the applications are endless. This is the enabling tool, not the outcome.
I love that. Alex, I'm going to bring it over to you. You guys started long before generative AI was a hot topic. But before that, a lot of people got introduced to Naked through creative marketing and billboards. But more so, when you go on the website, it's this very awesome experience of getting a quote for insurance, which almost felt like AI-ish. So, is it a perfect storm for Naked to have been prepared for doing business this way, and now there's more adoption and people are more prepared for it? And maybe share a bit about your journey as the composition of the company and your focus on how ultimately the big role that technology plays in it.
Yeah, it's working. Yeah, so thanks. So it's great to be here, to be here with all of you, and really looking forward to the conversation as well. Yeah, I think just on the arrival of generative AI, it's been really well timed for us. But I suppose a lot of businesses that started when we launched in 2018, had an inkling that things would be evolving in the ML and AI space, and that the way things have been done historically would change profoundly. And I suppose we were sort of paying option premiums. So I think that's something that would evolve, would allow us to take insurance, in our case, to somewhere completely different. It's actually interesting what you were saying about the different evolutions that founders go through. This is probably my first real sort of startup. I had a consulting business, so I don't know if that really counts. But I think, we've sort of been through a little bit of the same journey in a sense. When we started, it was all about products. And then we sort of transitioned into really trying to figure out the distribution model, and then we started advertising. And now we're obsessed about the value chain. And so while we're not a B2B player or a B2C player, in our mind it is actually the insurance value chain, which is where there's an enormous amount of value to be unlocked. So we tend to think about it like a manufacturing process. Insurance companies, as we were talking about earlier, are very obsessed with marketing and distribution, I mean, for good reason. But we see quite a lot of, or see considerable value in really taking this value chain or this manufacturing process and seeing how it can be completely transformed. Away from slow, expensive, manual, sort of legacy processes into something that is as automated, as intelligent as it can be. And so the arrival of, certainly just things like cloud technology when we started and how that's evolved into being able to leverage machine intelligence of various forms, just creates an incredibly exciting place. We're all super excited about the potential. It's quite early, there's a lot happening, you're never quite sure where to invest most and all that sort of thing, but we know the broad strokes of where things are going and where we want to be, so that's great.
Yeah, so speaking, you mentioned a lot of interesting things. Speaking about growth, you said you focused on product and then growth. We had a discussion earlier, the cost per acquisition in insurance, most car insurance can be up to 5 times the premium plus. So all of you that have insurance, 5 times your premium is pretty much what your insurer paid to get you as a customer. So that's really expensive. And Alex, you mentioned it. You guys have always been product-led growth. Maybe talk a bit about that and how that is giving you an advantage in the market in terms of getting your acquisition cost up.
Yeah, so we don't pay 5 times premiums, fortunately. But it's, I think when we started, we were very clear. So all of the founders of Naked came out of the insurance industry. And we were very clear that the insurance industry in South Africa is functional. It's mature, and there's really no need for another OutSurance, another MyWay, another Old Mutual, frankly. And so we've been absolutely focused on the fact that we need to build something different. It needs to be something that is, one of the traps that you can fall into when you're operating in a kind of legacy industry like ours is that you end up spending almost all your time doing what the incumbents are already doing. And we've been extremely disciplined to say, okay, there's some of that you have to do. You've got to comply with regulations and cover the basics. But we've really got to make sure that we're pushing back the frontiers the whole time. And the sort of the currency with which you measure that, is really what that does to the customer. There's the cost efficiency and all that is critical as well. But really it's about how much we can move the needle in the customer experience. And if we can do that, then you measure that with what people actually do. And referrals have been a key measure for us. So when we started, we did quite a lot of surveying of our customer base. And I think the thing that, as an early stage sort of founder, it's a bit of an emotional roller coaster, and you're not always sure that you should have given up your well-paying job to earn nothing. And I think what was really gratifying to us was to hear early on that we had a very high percentage of super referrers. So something like 40% of our customers, in the first couple of years, were telling more than one person about us. And that sort of thing, it sort of gives you a lot of enthusiasm for the fact that you're finding that alignment with what customers actually want, that product market fit. And so, and certainly I do think that should be where the energy is. In any sort of tech product-based business, you don't want to get into putting up billboards and spending money on marketing when you haven't firmly established that there's a real need, real demand for what you're doing.
And I love that. The focus on those early users, you solve a problem well, give them a great experience, and they become ambassadors, right? And that just builds momentum that actually can get you to the next one. So I love that. Priaash, you are from the awareness company, and what a lot of people probably don't know is you come from a research background. And Alex was just speaking about a bunch of guys that came out of the insurance industry, which obviously helps you understand insurance and its flaws and all of those things. Your research also helps a lot with what you do. So maybe share a bit about your background and the awareness company and what you're working on.
Cool. Can everyone hear me? Yep. So super psyched to be here. Thank you for the invitation. So yeah, my background is in defense and security under research banner. Spent over 10 years with my co-founders, Shazia and Estelle, they're in the room today, working as defense scientists and engineers. So we used to do very, very cool stuff. We used to integrate fighter aircrafts, we used to work with pilots, we used to go onto live fire ranges, and is it turning into, once you use this, okay, cool, hello, okay, cool. Yeah, a lot of cool stuff, and we spent many years.
So sorry, is that the kind of stuff you see on movies?
Like for real, like I mean, we were to go on a live fire range, and the guy is dropping 8-kiloton
Bombs
down there, and we were measuring all that stuff, and writing models to predict how it will do, and like amazing stuff. And so very researchy, very sort of intense, very technical. And then one day we got the opportunity to start applying that knowledge and skills towards the fight against rhino poaching. And then our lives completely changed. Because then we got out of the lab and literally went into the bush.
Sure.
And when that happened, sort of, our minds changed completely. We never wanted to go back into the lab, firstly. And then the second thing is that we saw what data, AI, and software can actually do in the real world. It can have this massive impact. And that's really excited us. The problem was we were in a research environment, so there was very little commercialization. And so we saw that gap and opportunity. And that actually led us to jump out from our jobs. We did it cold one day. We literally sat together in the room and pressed the resign button. So stupid. But we had constructed this vision. And so situational awareness is this concept that comes from fighter pilots. They need to make split decisions in seconds that affects their lives. And so that's why we call the awareness company. It's around sort of being aware of what's happening, understanding how to project that. And so fast forward, we're now the awareness company. We're a seed stage startup. Our mission is to make data joyful and easy for business. And that's going to lead to a world where every person in every organization is a hero for people, planet, and profit. So we are sustainability and climate focused at the moment, with a vision to spread data and AI and productionize it to create a product. And so our product's name is Hydra, and you're going to hear a lot about Hydra hopefully in the future. And so that's how our background led us into this startup world. And yeah, no regrets.
Love that. Rajiv, so Next 176 obviously invests in startups. They're also a venture studio that builds products themselves and partners with a lot of startups and other businesses to move things forward. But on the venture studio side, there's a lot of talk that's starting to surface on LinkedIn, and you're seeing moves in the industry. People aren't hiring as many developers. Today I saw a post by someone who's quite a good developer who said you can do 5 times as much. Now that you can use AI to help them code. Speaking to other founders, they say, they've got very little coding experience, so they can build MVPs within 3 weeks. Creating marketing materials now easier than ever. All of those things, like how's the role of the venture studio changing because of generative AI and this technology that's now at the fingertips of founders for a few $100 a month?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think super relevant this year especially. As we've, 2023, we were kind of figuring out what all these tools were able to do. And I think this year was the start of commercializing some of the AI tools that have come to market over the last couple of years. I think from a venture studio model, the the focus going forward is not, can we build something because we've got the resources in-house to do it, and someone sitting next door or down the road or in Pretoria can't do it. The challenge for us is technology is now empowering more and more people at an increasing rate to get from zero to MVP. So how are we accelerating our ability to go from zero to MVP at a cheaper cost than someone externally? So minimizing the opportunity cost of testing. So, a model that I've come across, and I'm sure many of you in the room have come across recently, is called 80-90. So the founder of Social Capital in the US started this business, and the reason it's called 80-90 is because as a venture studio or a venture builder, their model to the world is everyone now has, well, we say everyone, but the reality is it's a few. But let's assume it's everyone. Everyone has technology and it's been democratized. So what we're going to do is, rather than take a year to test something, you tell us what you want to do because you're the subject matter expert. We can build very iteratively and very quickly, and we will get you from zero to MVP 80% of the way at a 90% discount because we figured out how to leverage technology. And that's just the start, right? I think there's going to be many, many, many more companies like that which offer that, rather than say, hey, if you want to build something, I'm happy to build it for you, but I'm going to take 50%, 60, 70, 80, 100% of your company. I think that model is going to be phased out very, very soon.
And that's great because it's democratizing access to being able to be a startup, right? It's making it easier, cheaper. I mean, we all know in South Africa how hard it is to get very early stage funding. And if we can use AI to not have to get early stage funding, to be further along in the process, I think everybody's going to benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alex, so you guys started with using automation. It was always a tech focus. How do you use technology to optimize the business to fight the incumbents and be more efficient? How has generative AI changed your internal business? Like, have you started incorporating it in builds, in planning, and maybe some of those things? Because obviously you've always had a focus to do a customer side. You've had a great chatbot. I'm sure it's getting better with the introduction of some of these AI large language models. But how have you started using that within the business? Because I think there's a lot of people in the room that might not use AI on the outside, but it could be really useful inside. So I'd love to hear how you've been thinking about it. Is the volume turned up maximum on everybody use as much AI as possible, or where's naked in that chain?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, I think just start off with what you're saying about startups, because it's something that actually comes up even for us, is that it does democratize people's ability to get to MVP. But that also then sort of really lowers the barrier to entry for anybody. And I think as we look at as I say, with the kind of manufacturing process, the value chain of insurance, we're really mindful that we need to do things that are sort of really differentiated, and it seems to be a lot about leveraging domain knowledge. Like the depth of one's domain knowledge, and I think what Priaash is talking about in terms of the experience that he and his founders have had with in the defense sector and so on, I think is what puts him in a strong position. And I think we've got to be careful. I think both in startups, but also when we're looking to try and differentiate ourselves internally, to not just do things which really don't require a lot of domain knowledge or don't require a lot of specialization. And so we've really been working hard to say, like, if you take that value chain, how do we go deep in that and really try and re-engineer it deeply? But on your question, yeah, I mean, we've got a couple of colleagues here as well. My co-founders didn't bother. But we've got Matt and Peter here, who are senior people at Naked, and yeah, they'll know I spend a lot of time banging the drum on this one. And I think as a certainly in the development process, yes, there are undoubtedly people who are starting businesses and people who are, there's a strong motivation to use these new tools to really maximize their productivity. In a sort of, for many, let's call it career developers, people who have got lots of experience, they've got very well established ways of doing things. And there's certainly some resistance to change that we've encountered. And so we've come up with all sorts of creative ways to try to break people's established patterns of development and try to get them to do things in very, very different ways. Because it often does involve slowing down, speed up. You've got to make mistakes, you've got to try things, you've got to do things. I can be done with this thing, but I'm messing around with this new tool that's doing all sorts of stupid things. You've got to break the back of that. And yeah, I mean, we very early on got ChatGPT onto everyone's desk, and we sort of have all sorts of things around, putting in everyone's OKRs has to include it, and I suppose a lot of people are doing this kind of thing, but it's really created a kind of inner narrative that this is strategic for us. We're trying to do this at a level which is a few steps ahead of everybody else, and we've really got to go, like I said, very deep with it. And so I think everyone's probably quite sick of it. But what's happened, and I'll give you one little example. We use a sort of quarterly planning process, and we run a kind of one of the sprints in the quarter. We do planning and there's space for people to do innovation work. And of course, I mean, there's so much incredible potential at the moment with these things. If you've got a bit of time, you've got a bit of resource behind you. And I mean, we just had our innovation session now, and it was. They literally were completely secretive about it. And they just put this thing in my diary, and not just mine, and a whole bunch of people's diaries, And they just came up with this completely crazy idea and completely crazy approach. I mean, I think Madam do it as well. Which is just totally changes the way you think about what the potential is, and that the sort of idea that this is some future that you'll never reach suddenly became wrong, and that this thing is something we can do today. Something where we can move the needle massively right now, and that and yes, we are undoubtedly in a hype cycle, and we know many of these things are still sort of stuck at POC stage, and the challenges of getting many of them to production are real, and it's not easy, but those problems are being overcome steadily, and if you can find really good use cases, it's probably profound what can be achieved.
Yeah, I personally enjoy just discovering new things that it can actually do, because obviously they don't, I mean, if you follow closely, you'll know the updates that they bring out, but if you don't, I'm constantly surprised. I'm like, oh, it can actually do this, pasting screenshots of a Google Sheet, and it's one of my favorite data things. I mean, I'm not an actuary, so Alex is no point in what I'm saying now, but people that are not actuaries actually struggle to get sheets to do what they want. So I screenshot a sheet and then put it in there and go, I want to do this. And it gives me the formula, actually the exact formula you're supposed. And I found that amazing. It's we can all be actuaries now. So,
Exactly.
but on, Alex, I mean, you speak about, it's the barrier to entry to get into a market is now very easy, right? But then you also speak about the domain knowledge, which is really important. Apart from domain knowledge going forward, if it can take any person in this room 2 weeks, let's disregard the regulatory process. Let's say it take everyone in this room 2 weeks to launch an MVP of naked insurance, and now everybody can do it. Apart from domain knowledge, what are some of the other things that are now shifting the focus on these things are valuable in this new era of building startups?
Sure. Yeah, it's. I think that speed has got to be the single biggest thing that's changing. The ability to establish an MVP, to basically prove the case, to validate your hypotheses extremely quickly, is remarkably quick. I don't have a lot more to say really on what's changing. Because when I look back at what we went through, I think that we could have done things a lot more quickly. There's certainly a number of areas that we spend time on that we would need to spend time on now. But yeah, I don't know. I think that fundamentally things haven't changed. They've just become a lot easier, and you need less stuff to make progress. But I mean, just coming back to the domain knowledge point, I think that it's quite possible, and I mean, I know not much less about it than Rajiv does, but I do wonder, if we're not going to see sort of an increasing sort of age of founders. I'm a relatively mature founder, as you can see, and I think that in a space where people can like replicate ideas very, very quickly, and the ideas are not deep, they're not built on a lot of deep domain knowledge. I do wonder how many of them are sustainable. I mean, we know there's been countless businesses who've built something that OpenAI came out with and just completely destroyed their business in no time. It's always happened, but I think the pace of that, the scale of that, the scope of that has just grown enormously. So I think now what's needed because of that pace is not just a good idea. It's something deeper than that. It's Peter Thiel always said, you need to believe something that other people don't believe. You need to know something is true that other people don't see as true. And I think that's starting to become something that needs to be quite rich, quite deep, quite profound, not just one sort of thin idea. And I think that's the challenge.
I think you touch on a very important thing there, Alex, because the barrier to entry for an older person that has domain experience, let's say someone that works at Old Mutual or big corporate, is for them to start a business pre-AI or startup, they would have to get money, pay a developer or develop an house to build something while running their full-time job, just to get to a point to go, well, is this going to work or not? So I mean, these guys are now perfectly poised to go, let me take a few coding lessons and see if I can slap something together using AI and get a first version out. So I think we're going to see a lot more domain expertise coming into the startup space. And Rajiv, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Do you agree? Do you think we'll see more older founders into the space because of this?
Firstly, are you saying that people who work at Old Mutual are old?
I'm saying the experienced people at Old Mutual.
Experienced, wise and experienced, right? Say that. It's a really interesting premise. And we were sort of speaking about this as a team yesterday when we were chatting about AI and the various segments of the population who leverage it and for what. I think for me, it's more a case of who has the maturity to take a longer time horizon to get to an outcome and therefore will build a more sustainable business. If that happens to be an older person, sure, but I do think there are younger people who are willing to take a longer term time horizon and not go for the instant gratification. For me, that's more of the differentiator rather than do you understand technology or not. I mean, we learn things really quickly as human beings. We're pretty adaptable. I think as we move into an era of no code, very low no code, as we move into a world where NLP gets more and more advanced, it will be like having a conversation with the technology that you're using. So yes, I think that lends itself to people. But I think the one thing I always come back to when we have conversations about technology and jobs and whatnot is the reality is, again, going back to the macro, we're sitting in a city within an economy where half of the youth don't have jobs, right? And so I think it's going to be more by default that you have a higher risk appetite to try something because you have nothing to lose. And so I think once we go through that period, and if we can hopefully solve for that and create jobs in the process, sure. But I think for me the lens is who's got the patience and the maturity to take a longer term horizon to get to an outcome.
Well, they're thinking like an investor. Priaash, you were involved in, or let me take a step back with everybody's favorite quote. If you've ever seen a presentation by someone that works at EY or McKinsey, you would have seen this. data is the new gold. Or the new oil, sorry, the new oil. Data is the new oil. So everybody's data. 10 years ago, everybody data, go crazy. You've been involved in data long before actually people discovered how data could be oil. How have you experienced the change of this industry from going, everyone's just talking to data to now we actually understand what we can do with it? And I'd love to hear your opinion. I mean, I don't know a lot of people that were involved in the space before, ChatGPT went mainstream. Now everybody's in the space. So maybe share your perspective. Like, what do you think of that? And are we actually at a point where data is now oil?
So, firstly, data is the new gold was the title of the podcast we did.
Yes, actually.
I actually don't like that quote at all. Data is the new oil. I actually fundamentally disagree with that. Like, if you map that together, data isn't the oil, it's what you're going to do with it. Sure. Which means there's a lot. And a lot of companies sort of skip the data part and jump to the AI part, NextGen part. Like, hey, this magic thing is just going to create magic out of nowhere. It doesn't work that way.
It works when you ask her to write a love song to your wife. Until she learns what ChatGPT is, then you're in trouble.
So why I love the question, Renier, because that's why we call ourselves a data and AI company. It's very intentional. Global companies like Databricks and stuff, they do the same as well. I'm a data and AI company. What do you think fundamentally differentiates OpenAI? Why are their models so good? Like, what's the thing that's making it so good? All of you guys using it all the time and giving it this amazing data, and plus they had a whole bunch of access that everyone had access, and it's amazing. But we gotta keep that data at top of mind. We gotta think, how do we get their data into our organizations? In large enterprises, everyone will say this. Data is so fragmented. And you talked about spreadsheets and stuff like that. I mean, there's systems and there's tools, and there's the tool for this, and CRM and ERP and tracking and finance tool, and you get like frustrated, right? And so the narrative is, let's keep data top of mind. Data is still a next-gen tech, along with AI and sensors and all of conversations and LLMs and visual LLMs and all of these type of things. And so the question is, how do we get better at data? Because OpenAI doesn't understand your large enterprise context. Well, maybe it does if you're giving it data, but I just discourage that. I'm sure that's policies. But again, how do we then get these next-gen techs to understand our internal context? I'm in energy, or I'm in water, or I'm in insurance, or I'm in the financial side, or I do sustainability. There is a deeper context that starts with the data.
I love that. And you speak about OpenAI having data. We're just pouring data. I mean, I'm telling them what color my wife's eyes are when it's writing me a song. So we pouring data into this thing. It sits in America. When we all become life dependent on it, they can triple the prices, and they can correct the debt that the US is in by doing that. There's a lot of things that can happen here. So a big challenge is, and if you think about a lot of these large technologies that require a lot of money, they're all getting developed in America, and they're all getting developed elsewhere in the world. Starlink is another example. We've got global internet service, which is awesome. I mean, it's bringing fast internet, cheaper in many cases to parts of the world that previously couldn't get it. But still, it's all American companies. How do we, as South Africans, how should we think about that? Should we simply go, let's build on these things and strengthen relationships with the countries that are building it? Or is there actually opportunity for us to go, we can build our own OpenAI? I mean, I know how expensive it is, but if we were to do that, is it possible? Is that something we should do? What do you think?
100%. Like, I worked in a building that had 400 PhDs and masters, technical views.
That's a CSR.
Was able. But the talent is here, in country. I have zero doubt about it. Zero doubt. There's brilliant people here, very driven, very passionate. The second thing that we have going for us is we have real world problems happening now, every day. So you go back to the data, what does real world problems give you? It means you're solving those problems now and you're starting to use technology. That means you're generating a lot of contextual real world data that you can use then to train all these AIs with. That is a big differentiator. How do we create an open AI in South Africa? Sure. They started with $100 million, from last year. Microsoft invested, $10 billion in them, and I'm sure after that it's going back into AI.
Isn't he raising $1 trillion now?
And now they're raising $1 trillion. So I think there is a risk appetite that we would coming up looking at the startup. We want to see more of that. We need to sort of play more into this game, but is there enough capital in India to actually play those games as the US? No. I don't think so. But I also like to think about it is why do we have to think in that separation? Like we, South Africa, they're the US. How do we, we got to fast follow, but we've also got to combine that with what we start calling the awareness company, intentional innovation. So if you're intentional about it, like you don't put this blocker in your mind, there's no way we can create an open AI product. No. Why put that blocker down? Like keep that intentional innovation, keep that deep blue sky research sort of mentality, put a commercialization hat on and go for it.
And I think, as you were speaking, I'm thinking about there's a lot of niches in South Africa, right, that people in America won't click on, right? So we can always double down on that. Rajiv, I'd love to hear your comment and then also maybe speak about like some of the sectors that you think there are opportunities for us to capitalize on.
Yeah, I was like, please can I add, because I'm really, really passionate about this. You talk about data. Going back to the numbers, so in order to have data, you need to be operating within an environment that is already digital, right, in order to acquire data. So what are the facts about, again, going back to the context, because this entire conversation requires context. There's no point in talking about next-gen technology when we need to first figure out today's technology and digitize our economy, right? So a couple of years ago, I came up with this model. I called it the 4D model. And so it's 4 steps. The first step is simply digitizing a value chain. I'm going back to my value chains. Take any value chain. Step 1, you first have to digitize the value chain. And today, you could probably, as an investor, fill an entire portfolio with companies that are simply just digitizing a value chain. Forget about data, forget about AI, forget about the future. Step 1, digitize. Because once you do that, you can then start to disintermediate. Well, step 2 actually, so digitize, then you can decentralize. And now we can involve more people in a value chain because it's been digitized. If you can do that, you can disintermediate and make it more efficient. And if you can do that, then the 4th D that creates a circular is the data because it's within a digitized environment or value chain. And so the priority for us is simply doing that because we don't have the data to go into an LLM. Don't talk about LLMs. OpenAI started on day 1 in 2015 with $1 billion, right? So you have access to capital, you have access to GPUs and CPUs and compute power. Meanwhile, we don't even have data. Half of the African economy is still offline, not on the internet. We have 20% of the global population and 2% of software developers. So who's even using the data, right? So step 1 for us is to understand who within a value chain is naturally, socially, culturally, and economically incentivized to digitize that value chain. And then let's have a conversation about AI and LLMs and next-gen technology. I'm very passionate about this. I can go into more stats if you want.
But I love that, Rajiv, because I think Alex sitting next to you and he's thinking you're explaining exactly how we built Naked. Because, I mean, you have this insurance industry, and from the outside, we all look at it and go, okay, now insurance is digital, right? I email my broker and They do things on an app and then I get insurance. But I mean, you guys looked at it and said, no, this thing isn't really digitized and connected, right? I mean, that was your strategy, right?
Yeah, and I suppose even the word digital is, and connected are there's shades of grey, and so you can make things more digital, more fully connected. I think one thing. I like what you're saying, and I think there's something interesting though that is worth adding to that model, which is that a lot of these AI technologies, generative AI with voice and the ability to kind of process emails and things, makes the need to digitize somewhat less. I'll give you a sort of practical example on our side. So we do a lot of car insurance, and so we deal a lot with people in the sort of car repair value chain. And for example, panel meters, not the most digitally savvy organizations you're ever going to reach, right? And so on the one hand, you could say, well, we can't really do anything until we've fully digitized these guys, and it'd be great if they would. And I think it talks a little bit to some of the opportunity in this country, which is how to really effectively work with people who are not that digitized in working on a value chain. So we're spending quite a lot of time now in trying to sort of understand how do we effectively engage with an organization that realistically is not going to be very digital anytime soon. And it's possible now, for example, to actually get the AI to phone them and say, I need an update on this repair. It'd be great if they had a nice integrated system and APIs and they were sending us all the data and everything like that, and we'll work on that and hopefully eventually we'll get there. But in the meanwhile, we can actually call them automatically, get a human on their side to give us the information, upload it onto our system and pass that back to the customer. And so I think there's an interesting kind of potential to sidestep or jump past some of the limitations of digitization. And I think that particularly in countries that are not perhaps that developed from a digitization perspective, some of these tools really allow us to leap way forward. It's a bit like mobile money, but another version of that, where we can jump past the need for traditional API integrations and things like that, at least for a while, as a stopgap.
I think that's fascinating. I think most times you take something from it because it's about really digitizing has changed. Like you said, I love your example. It's a great example. You can use AI to phone someone, but that brings a data point back into your system, which then helps the process along of the value chain and the workflow. Rajiv, just on the previous question, maybe just industries do you think is ripe for the most disruption in South Africa when it comes to, let's get them online, let's connect them, and the benefit that founders can get from it?
Yeah, I think going back to the first comment, it's like going back and asking what industries will the internet disrupt. It's everything. I think there are critical areas that provide enabling infrastructure for the rest of the economy to then grow. And I think this is probably the appropriate time to sort of share some of our theses as Next 176 as well. So I mentioned that we're existing and we're building within an economy where consumer purchasing power is constrained. And so one of the lenses that we look through is, while you have B2B businesses that can thrive, what are you investing in to ultimately create jobs, to narrow that delta, that gap between population growth and job growth? How are you empowering an economy simply to trade? And so trade enablement is really important to us. Creating jobs is really important to us. Contributing to sustainability and healthcare and all of the enabling activities that ultimately, over the long term, increase the average purchasing power of the average South African. And I think the sort of the thread that flows through all of that is trade enablement. And so, looking at very, very common sectors that we're all surrounded by on a daily basis. So, 90% of the stuff that we buy is still transported to us by ships. But our ports have a capacity of 6% of global supply, right? And there's so many other sectors like that where we're just sort of constrained. I was having a conversation before this about mining and the technological innovation within the mining industry. And so I think if we are leveraging technology in areas of food wastage, as an example, port capacity, logistics, it's the boring, unsexy stuff that we don't really spend as much time thinking about. But if we can help solve for those sorts of things that ultimately enable trade, then we're contributing to an economy that's more sustainable, and those people can then afford to buy, a B2C product and get onto Uber Eats or get onto Shein or whatever, and sort of be the beneficiaries of those B2B products. So we're not sector focused, we're focused on trade enablement, creating jobs, contributing to a more financially well population, because we believe that you have to have a first step of investing in all of the boring stuff enabled by technology before you can get to the sexy next-gen stuff.
I love that, and as the tide rises, obviously, like you said, there's more machines everywhere. So I love that, and there's so many, you speak about the ports, there's so many supply chain inefficiencies and market inefficiencies and those things across different sectors. I think there's opportunities everywhere. I mean, irrespective of NextGen, there's so many things we can still do. So definitely exciting time to be a founder in South Africa. Right, we almost going to open for questions. So the first question is always the difficult, right? If you've been in an event, you go, anybody have questions? That's an awkward moment. So I'm preparing you, get your first question ready so that we can get into it. And while you think about that, Priaash, what is the next gen technology? But obviously we talk a lot about AI. Like, what LLM are you backing and why? And is that the one that you use mostly at the moment?
So you're asking what other technologies other than AI?
No, on AI. Let's talk about LLMs. Like, which one are you backing and why?
Which LLM? Sure. Be the one we're gonna build. The second one. No, it's super interesting to sort of watch it now, right? Probably obvious OpenAI. Everyone is talking about it. Everyone's using it. First, one Gemini. And there's Inflection, there's Perplexity. The ones I'm actually quite interested in the ones that it's building on top of OpenAI. Because the basic natural language chat interface is great, but I'm a visual learner. Now I want my answers in a different way because I absorb that faster, and I'm a whiteboard guy. So I want the AI to give me an answer in a whiteboard, and I'll be like, yeah, I understand this 100%. It's all about time to value. Like that's what it should give us. So I think we're still interested to watch, to follow, but also to create in parallel. Because the baseline technology is creatable, right? And like I said earlier, the difficult part is how you train it. That the data sources for it. I love it. You said, you gotta digitize first to get the data. Mm-hmm. That's maybe the gaps in there. So yeah, we're gonna observe, but I'm also observing the supporting technologies around the AI. So IoT is kind of like this forgotten thing. That's going to come back because why? It's going to give us automated data that's going to stream in.
But I think that's a very important point because I think when IoT came out, it was almost a bit too ahead of its time, right? So people put out these probes and sensors and CPUs in places they've never been able to. The tech guys go, this is cool, I can now monitor X, Y, Z. But it ended up being so what in most cases. And now with AI catching up, you can go, well, it can be so what, just give it an AI, it'll start figuring out how it can be useful.
That's awesome, because how far can you take that data point? Now AI takes that data point further towards insight. And I don't want the data to drive decisions. We don't actually like that, drive decisions. I want it to make the decision. Make 5 and let me pick the best one. So it's an elevation of insights, an elevation of decision making. And we stop sitting in front of a PowerPoint for 6 hours to try to make a decision and a meeting. Who likes that? No one can. Shout out to.
I know a few people.
So yeah, it's really about that elevation. So I'm curious to see how IoT is sort of coming back, because now all these models want more data. Automation, that's automatic, that's supporting data. We're still huge fans of people generating data as well. So those, we're going to have an innovation of technology that you still want to create data, whether it's a social media post or some app that you create in your business that helps you create data as well. So everything's supporting around this. There's a really good TED Talk. Watch it by Mustafa, who's the CEO of Microsoft AI. And his TED Talk was, what is AI anyway? What is it? And he argues that it keeps shifting what we think it is. We don't think, now everyone thinks it's LLM, right? And what is it? And his view is it's going to become a digital species, but still for people. And that was very interesting view. So go watch that out. It will go quite interesting. So to summarize, all the supporting, yes, AI is a hype now, but it's not just hype, right? There is a change. Like the internet, there is a big change. So how fast can we leverage it? But let's keep an eye as well as around all the supporting technologies.
Yeah, the IoT one is definitely interesting. I'll just drop one in that I've realized recently. I was reading a book about how airplanes got fast-tracked the development of airplanes because of the Second World War. Like they had to really invest a lot of engineering into it. And a few years ago when drones became out, everybody said, drones are going to start delivering things. And then, that never really happened, apart from KFC doing a ceremonial one at the Priaash playing one game. I've never really seen the actual drone delivery. But with all the wars happening in Ukraine specifically, that has become a drone war. And there are over 200 companies in the Ukraine that are focusing on, just in the Ukraine, never mind Russia side, that are focusing on some kind of drone technology. And eventually the war will be finished, but all those engineers, all that capability, all that investment into that space, I think we're about 5 years away from seeing drones flying around everywhere doing all kinds of interesting. So we're going to open up to the floor. Panelists, you've been amazing, thanks so much, but we're not done yet. So if anybody has questions, there we go, we've got the first question, we're on our way.
Cool. So thank you very much for sharing your personal stories. It's really cool to hear each person's origin story to a certain degree. One could argue that a high quality founder or a visionary in some cases is someone that really lives in the future and tries to bring the actual reality to match that future that they're living in, right? And so Alex, you alluded to that by saying you know something that other people don't know, or you have a value hypothesis that other people aren't aware of yet, and you're trying to validate that. And when I look at the panelists on the stage today, each of you had a particular vision of where you saw the world should be, or what the world should be like, right? And now we're seeing all of these new technologies coming in, all of these new changes, be that geopolitically, be that economically, or be that technologically, like with the emergence of machine learning technology run amok, right? My question to you is how do you look at these changes and then update your vision as you progress towards building that vision at the same time?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's difficult. I always find that the most difficult thing in what I do is that I do quite a bit on the product is to just prioritize what we're going to build and what we're not going to build. And that is very informed by the emerging worldview, the emerging kind of outlook on what it is that we're about and what it is that the future is going to look like. And I suppose particularly over the last few years with all of this, all of the hype of the AI run amok, machine learning run amok, is how much do you get carried away with that? I mean, I remember we were at a strat in the bush recently or a while ago, and if you spend enough time, really having the time to think about these things deeply, wow, the potential. I mean, the way you can get quite lost in this like everything's going to change. It's like we're wasting our time. Like just drop everything. That's completely just like there's no need. I mean, I'm going to leave and I'm just going to do this all by myself completely. We can build a massive insurance company by myself in an afternoon because the whole architecture of everything has changed. The point is, I guess you're getting an insight. my somewhat crazy minds at times. But they're trying to sort of harmonize the hype cycles, the ideas that are coming up, all the sort of pressures on what one's doing with a vision of where one's going is, I think, really, really important and really tricky. I mean, interestingly, this, they talk, a lot about successful startup is about effective pivoting, right? And unfortunately, fortunately, it's not something we've actually really had to do, or we haven't done for better or worse. Of course, our view on things has evolved, and we've shifted things slightly, but we haven't kind of hit one of those points where it's like, okay, the hypothesis failed, we now need to really change the game. But that seems to be, I suppose, the real skill. I mean, maybe I don't have it, but just to be able to really go, okay, this road has run out, and I now need to move. I mean, the example that I really love is Slack. I'm sure you guys know that. I mean, that wasn't the business they were building at all, and yeah, I mean, that's really cool. And at the same time, I look at some of the things we do, and there are definitely businesses in them as well, like more B2B kind of businesses in there. I'm sure a lot of other insurers would love to get their hands on some of the stuff we're doing. And it's how to hold all of that, how to sort of understand your sort of strategic priorities, and I'm a big believer in simplicity, for example. So starting to sort of spin out all kinds of B2B businesses is definitely not consistent with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yep, sure.
I think it's a really important question, because the one thing we haven't spoken about this evening is the importance of education. So it's all well and good to advance as a society, but how are we equipping each other to learn and develop and be agile enough? And I think, I use that 30-year timeline from when we became a democracy, got the internet, whatnot. Just one generation ago, the issue that we had as people in order to grow and develop and build businesses was we lacked access to information. Today, the problem is we're inundated with information, and the critical skill set that we have today is the ability to effectively filter and be agile enough to move around things. And that includes the ability to unlearn very quickly, because science changes every day. What was an amazing diet and good for our cholesterol yesterday is bad for us today, and now I'm on statins. So, I think it's an important consideration, which is not just the agility that you're referring to, it's the ability to unlearn, it's the ability to filter, and I think the really, really critical layer of our foundation going forward is the education piece.
I just happened to be next to him, so it's just a proximity thing. Rajiv, you just spoke about the education piece, and Alex, you spoke about deep domain knowledge, and Priaash, you spoke about data. And you take those three pieces together and you look at AI, and I keep looking at it as a black box in many cases. So I come out of a marketing background and marketing analytics, and I'm finding that less and less people are able to understand why something's happening, attribution, measurement, targeting. It's black boxes on black boxes. Meta's got their own AI algorithm, and Google's got theirs, and there's an optimization algorithm, and it's almost like these AIs are stacking, and it's creating this black box where no one knows the data going in, no one has the deep domain knowledge, and no one's educated to understand how to use it. So how do we how do we lean into these worlds where we actually understand the technologies we're using? And is it possible to be an expert in domain depth, data, and educated all at the same time? And as a next gen, how are we going to actually not be stupid when we use it?
I'll start. Everyone's talking about like safety, and like all the issues that OpenAI recently was fundamentally, around safety and people's egos. I think there's a combination of this, and it is scary, right? Because now, people have this technology and they're getting smarter with it, and surely not everyone has good intent. I don't think so. foolish to think that. So now these are genuine concerns. The thing I think about is that doesn't stop the progress of it.
No.
And so you can either be part of it and use it to do good and create value in the world and sort of beat the others that are trying not to. Right? It's like, the absence of doing nothing. You gotta keep playing in the game to sort of stay ahead of that. Yes, I think, there's generalists and there's specialists. And like, personally, I consider myself a generalist. So I want to have those three. Like, I want to be dangerous enough to be able to apply it in a commercial space, commercial world. But then there's also specialists and in each of them. And I think that's why startups are awesome. You don't do this stuff alone. Don't do it alone. Find some people to do it with, whether they're co-founders, whether they're partners, whether they're investors, and so forth, and sort of build that ecosystem. And then build the ecosystem around the ecosystem. So now we want a startup ecosystem, and everyone in the room here now is part of the startup ecosystem, an investor ecosystem. And then I think the more we create communities around this, and the more we keep having these conversations, are we going to get towards, the right path.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would like to spend a couple of words on the black boxes, because it's, I think it's a good observation. And I think as what you're saying, like you spend a bit of time studying many things these days, like actuarial or anything, and you wonder, I've got kids kind of coming to the end of school and thinking, I guess, what should they do? Like, what is going to be, what is the kind of application, what is the kind of contribution they're going to be able to make when quite a lot of what we've done historically probably doesn't carry the same value. So, and I think I think we've got to accept some element of the black box. I think it's the world we're moving into. Like, understanding all the way through what is going on is a problem. I mean, I get that one of the things that used to back was this term AI. And, arrogantly having studied actuarial, I'm a statistician, so I know how to build models and everything. And even our CTO, he studied AI as part of his computer science degree. I mean, he wouldn't know null hypothesis hit him in the face kind of thing, but but he was in systems integration work that was used, that whatever visual systems integration work, whatever it is, and I think the point is that a lot of the things that required skill, that required experience, are just going to be less needed, but they're going to change. Right, and I think it's trying to figure out what it is. Like in the marketing space, yeah, it is. It's overwhelmingly difficult to navigate all of these different optimization algorithms that are running. Privacy laws don't help with the few sort of trails that you had are being taken away, and now it's you sort of wonder, do you have any chance of really contributing, sort of almost as a human? But I certainly. Okay, in that space, I think there's still plenty, there's a long way to go, but I mean, theoretically, at least we could get to a place where there was really no need for any of us, and some very smart algorithm could deal with all the data, could just process it all and come up with something optimal. But, and that sort of, that end point is, I think, the thing that makes us all nervous about career choices or businesses that leverage, that play in the gap between that fully automated endpoint and where we are now. But I think at some stage we've got to embrace the fact that we're going to be living with black boxes and try to figure out how to work with them in the most effective way.
I think my 2 cents on that is just to take an extension of your question. For me, there's a professor, her name's Rachel Botsman. She teaches a course at Oxford University called Trust in the Digital Age. And I think my interpretation of your question, or the extension of that, is we have all of this information. We don't understand the majority of it. I think I speak for all of us. It's a big black box to all of us. But the only way we're going to be able to symbiotically coexist with technology that is developing at an exponentially higher rate than we are as human beings is if we figure out ways to trust our ability to symbiotically coexist with them. And I think the trust component is trust by definition is you just have to take a leap of faith, right? So we're never going to be able to understand it to its full extent, but we have to make judgment calls as human beings and go, wait, hold on, if I'm going to symbiotically coexist with this, there are going to be certain things that I don't understand that I have to just trust. So just to give you a quick example, in the medical world, about 50, 60 years ago, the amount of primary knowledge within the medical industry was said to double every 50 years. So if I wanted to go into the field of medicine, I would spend 10 years studying and 40 years working. And the amount of knowledge that I would have to know and be up to date on was, it would double in 50 years. Do you know what? Does anyone know what that number is today? The amount of medical knowledge in the world, according to public sources, you can Google that, is every 73 days. So I'm going to study for 10 years and I'm going to work, but mathematically I have to still study an additional 30 hours a day in order to keep up with the rate at which medical knowledge is advancing. So at some point I'm going to have to trust technology and leverage it to do my job effectively as a medical professional. I don't think we have a choice.
That's very interesting. Funny little caveat. I was speaking to someone building a medtech business, and I'm like, they use doctors as part of it. And I'm like, cool, you probably want older doctors because they're better. And she said, no, I want younger doctors because they're better. So I always thought, as a go to the older GP because he knows what he's doing. But it turns out the younger one knows more because he's closer to.
They study the difference because of the
Yes.
impact of technology.
Yeah.
So there's statistical results on that.
So maybe one more question and then we can get, now we have a lot of questions. I'll go to this gentleman in the front and we're going to head out to the front. If you have any other questions, you're welcome to just engage the panelists. I'm sure they'll stay around for 5 minutes or so afterwards.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the insights and input and the selflessness to share your journey with us. One of the phrases that was doing the rounds back in the COVID years is you're on mute. So, borrowing on that phrase, one of the contrasts you kept revisiting, Rajiv, is that 30 years ago, that internet in its infancy, and now we're back here. And I did some calculations quickly, and 30 years is 1,536 Saturdays away from today. And there's a reason why that's important. And by then, I'll be 18 Saturdays from being 70. So whatever you tell me, I'll take it very seriously. I'll take notes. What should we put on mute as us as emerging founders at varying degrees of our journey as we venture out to not just imagine, but to materialize the Africa we want beyond the political rhetoric, in the boardrooms and out there in the field? Even if you have to deal with panel beaters in our sector, what should we put on mute by hook or by crook? Leave it there so that we can cut the nonsense away and think value chain and think collaboration, less competition.
I'll actually add the first one because you almost answered. Politics, we need to put politics on it. and a big thing that there's almost this chasm between two types of founders, right? The one is saying, let me wait for funding, or government needs to give more funding, or government needs to do X, Y, and Z. And we all agree government needs to do those things. But then you get founders who go, they put the government and politics on mute, and they go, let me build a business here and solve a problem. And I think so that's the first one I would add, but I'll get Priaash or maybe Rajiv if you want to answer.
Any thought?
Comfort. Put comfort on it. Comfortable.
Yeah.
Don't take a risk, man. The more risk we take, the more we're going to get better.
I think it's actually it's helpful to understand like a lot of the sort of venture capital models. That really only a few of the things they invest in are actually going to succeed. Because I think what that says to a founder is you actually need to put on mute everything, apart from the very, very specific thing that you're working on. And I mentioned simplicity earlier. That for me is absolutely key. It's the same thing as focus. And yeah, so for me, you've got to recognize that, like, yes, you're not going to be all things to all people. You're not going to be able to do everything you might be able to do. You can't service every channel, every idea. It's being as narrow-minded as possible and just tuning out everything else. And recognizing that at times that will mean that you may fail or you need to pivot. But, you know, that's not the end of the world.
I think mine, as you were saying that, I was going back, you know, the cliche Nelson Mandela quote that everyone uses at the end of every presentation. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. As you were talking, and I think you kind of answered your own question in a way, because you were like, what do we put on mute and how do we collaborate and not compete? And for me, your answer was in your question, which is, if you were going to put something on hold, in my humble view, it's almost inherent in a founder's DNA to want to do something and take the glory and just go do it. But if I were to say, you know, put this on mute, it would be almost holding yourself back from that inherent desire to want to win at all costs and to collaborate and share in the glory and share in the economics, because again, another cliche, the rising tide lifts all boats, right? And I think for me, that's the one thing that I've struggled with, where I've interacted with many founders and tried to get people together in the same room to collaborate. But it's like, no, that's my business. That's my technology. That's mine, that's mine, that's mine. And I'd rather own 50% of something valuable that's making a difference in people's lives than 100% of something that's going to struggle to scale on its own.
I love that. So, in closing, I mean, maybe just a comment, because I love the fact that you mentioned the collaboration. And, you know, for the longest time, I wanted to see more South African startups collaborate, and you know, because there's so much opportunity in there. But I'm not from here. I'm from Stellenbosch, and every time I come to Gauteng, it's just so striking, just the amount of opportunity there is. Yeah, there's so many businesses doing so many things. So it's just one from our side. Just want to encourage all the founders in the room. I think there's a lot of stuff we can complain about, but there's so much opportunity, specifically where all of you are at. And I'm excited about where we're going as a country when it comes to startups and businesses. And yeah, I want to encourage all of you to keep building and keep trying to find ways to collaborate and work together. So yeah, but let's just thank all the panelists. You guys are amazing. Appreciate it. A little gift for each of you, just to say thank you for your time, or thank your partner for allowing you to be late.
We didn't chat about the metaverse.
We did. So, the metaverse had it almost feels like it had a short lifespan, quick in and out. Yeah, still love the Zuckerberg memes survived longer than the metaverse. But who knows, the metaverse might make a comeback. But hey, thanks so much for coming. You can head out outside and we can continue to network a bit more. These guys will hang around. And yeah, thanks so much for coming. See you on the outside.